Welcome to the series What School Can Be. This is episode 1, Investments and Outcomes. This series is about how students can best succeed and thrive in their time at school and how parents can best help them do so. This is episode 1. We're going to get right into it with what I take to be the single most important way that students can understand how to best succeed and thrive at school. So first, we just need to recognize the vast disparity in outcomes that occur even within excellent schools. There are kids who graduate who are primed for life, who could literally start a job if they wanted to at a great firm and hit the ground running. They're really well educated, they're passionate, they're disciplined, they are great creators, and they love to learn and they love to collaborate, and they're just incredibly successful and they love doing what they do at one end. And then at the other end, there are kids who are still very immature. There are kids who don't like their work. And there are kids who don't really thrive and haven't really learned how to learn. And everywhere in between. So that's the range. So there's lots at stake. And it's important to understand at the beginning how much is at stake. What we're going to focus on in this video is how that wide range of discrepancies in outcomes hinges on a very wide discrepancy in investments that the students make in their life at school. We're going to talk about 3 modes of investment. The first is the most common mode that the students engage in, either consciously or subconsciously, and we're going to call it having skin in the game. So what do we mean by having skin in the game? Perhaps the most important aspect of having skin in the game is that the outcomes actually matter to the players. So kids are affected by whether they succeed or fail in their quest at school. When they succeed, they get excited and happy and feel good. And when they don't succeed, they hurt. As we're describing it, another feature of having skin in the game is that the primary motivation is to win, that it's in those outcomes of winning and losing, of scoring high and scoring not as high, that's where the happiness and satisfaction or pain and lack of satisfaction comes. It's in the actual outcomes, not in the doing. Kids with skin in the game tend to be college admissions focused, resume focused, grade focused on those end goals. One interesting aspect of having skin in the game, but no more than skin in the game for a student, is that often these students don't have learning as a goal. Learning is more of a process, and they're more focused on the outcome. So learning to them is an expense. It's something you have to do in order to get the outcome of a good score, for a good grade, for a good resume, for a prestigious college admission. And so there's a strange attitude toward learning that can develop here. So often the academic part of school becomes this cramming of information into working memory, short-term memory, to right before a test or a quiz, and you score as well as you can, and then you dump that information and you pack your mind with new information for the next assessment or quiz. And that's what sort of the routine of the academic day and calendar starts to look like. So kids focused on outcomes over process, they tend to look for shortcuts, right? Because if your goal is only the outcome and the process doesn't matter, then you do whatever you need to do in the process to achieve the outcome that you're shooting for. Having skin in the game as one's highest investment in school is often a very effective strategy for students. The downside is that it's sort of anxiety driven. It's hard to keep it going because there isn't really internal motivation to enjoy the process. You're just constantly having to use the force of your will to do all of this work that you would rather not be doing. And so it's a very anxiety driven enterprise where fear of bad grades and bad outcomes is more of a driver than the anticipation of good outcomes. And because there's so much work in the process and that work isn't really valued, it's tough. It's a very tough life, but it can yield very good outcomes. So we'll shift now to the least effective mode of investment in school, and we'll call this token in the game. So as opposed to skin in the game, where you actually hurt when things go wrong and you feel good when things go right because your skin is in the game, this is, if you push the metaphor, it's just like having a game token that's in the game. And the outcomes don't really matter to the token as a token. It's just like an avatar that's marching around the board. It's not like a really invested self that's marching around the board. Unlike having skin in the game, where the primary motivations are to score and to win, having token in the game, only investing token in the game, really the goal for those kids is to have fun. That's why they show up at school. Of course, they can't just have fun because they do actually have to keep functioning at school. They have to attain minimum standards, and those minimum standards become sort of the minimum level of their investment. For kids with only token in the game, learning is often completely missing as a goal. Often, they even brag about how they have no interest in learning. Having only token in the game is virtually always a terrible strategy because eventually you run afoul of the minimum requirements and you need to have skin in the game, and you always get yelled at by your teachers and your advisor and your parents. And so the fun that the kids were trying to have at school isn't really fun, and they have to have skin in the game anyway eventually. So you might as well start with skin in the game. All right, we'll pivot now to the most effective mode of investment, soul in the game. Having the soul in the game is about being affected personally by the process of the game, how you play the game, not just the outcome of the game. There's a lot more at stake. The primary motivations for having soul in the game are learning and creating. Perhaps paradoxically, enjoying the learning and investing yourself to learn and to score often leads to great outcomes. Even better outcomes than the people focused on the outcomes. Because most of the time is spent in process, if you like the process of learning and creating, as opposed to merely the outcome, you're likely to do that learning and creating at a different level. You're going to involve more of who you are. You're going to involve a lot of your brain, and you're going to not be trying to just pump information into your short-term memory to dump it. You're going to stick with it, and those are going to become what we call sticky memories that stay with you, that you can apply again and again and build on and build on. So people with soul in the game, they tend to get very engaged because they like what they're doing. They enjoy learning, they enjoy creating, and so they do it. They do it more. And when they get involved with their soul like that, that tends to get them deep into the world. And when they get deep into the world, they develop stories to tell. And people are interested in hearing those stories, those compelling stories that have genuine passion behind them. For instance, people, colleges, employers. Which is why putting soul in the game is the most effective and happiest strategy for investing in your life at school, both for college preparation and admission and for manhood preparation and admission, because you're throwing yourself fully into what you do and you're building who you are, and that leads to the enjoyment of the process, and it tends to lead to the very best outcomes. Yeah, let's do it. So to summarize, the three modes of investment with their modes of achievement, soul in the game, learning and creating, skin in the game, scoring and winning, token in the game, goofing around and scraping by. And there's two paradoxes to highlight here, that the kids who are trying to have the most fun by only investing token in the game and avoiding a lot of work, they end up having the least fun because their life just becomes bogged down in the consequences of dodging their responsibilities. So also, the skin in the game guys who try to score and win and often succeed, they usually end up scoring and winning to a lesser degree than the kids with soul in the game who are trying to learn and create. So that the higher you are on the list, sort of you get everybody else's goods as well. So the maximum enjoyment at school comes from having soul in the game. Next, skin in the game, and finally, token in the game. So we'd like to drill down a bit on this issue of the difference between learning and scoring as a goal. And so they're not the same. The issue is that learning is expensive. And it's either the goal or it's an expense. So you're either trying to maximize it or you're trying to minimize it. It's hard to be in that middle space because it's either what you're going for or you're willing to take shortcuts to get the outcome that you want and avoid all the expenses of learning. Learning's expensive in time, it's expensive in energy, it's expensive in vulnerability of soul, of actually putting yourself out there to care. And the logic of expenses is to minimize them, right? So you're either trying to do it or you're trying to minimize it because it's so expensive. So I'd love to raise a question here. What is the one thing most parents misunderstand about their children's education? I think it's that most kids do not show up at school to learn or create, but to score and win. Trying to learn and trying to score are not the same thing. Learning requires a much greater investment, an investment in the workings of the world. Learning requires caring about the world. Scoring by itself is just an effort to game the system. Because learners invest more, they engage more, They grow while they're at school. They influence things while they're at school in positive ways that everyone respects. Learners have soul in the game. So as we try to help kids get more from their school experience, we ask 2 questions for students. Why do you come to school? And what are you willing to invest in school? If you're coming to school to scrape by and goof around, is that really the best you can do for yourself, for school, for your future self? If you come to score and win, is that the best you can do for yourself and the school and your future self? Are you willing to love the world and throw yourself into learning about it and helping create it? Or are you really trying to get out what you're not putting in? And 2 questions for parents. What do you send your kids to school for? Is it for them to learn and grow and create, or is it primarily for them to score and win? And if you say, well, definitely the former, then try to ask yourself the second question. What would your kids say you send them to school for? Are they picking up from you that they're supposed to be learning and adding value and creating? Or are they only picking up from you that they're supposed to be scoring? So we're trying to make the case here for the connection between investment by the student and outcome for the student. That the higher the investment, the deeper the investment, the greater the outcome. So it's a great question everybody should be asking: students, parents, teachers, advisors. How can students find the motivation to invest soul in the game at school? So quickly here, one way to do it is to ask yourself, students, what practice you most enjoy doing in your life. You likely have soul in that game. So you know what soul in the game is, and you wouldn't give it up probably for anything. It's most likely the thing you most enjoy in the world, or the activities you most enjoy in the world. So you should ask yourself, why would you settle for less in any other aspect of your life? Also, imagine you're an employer or a friend or a spouse, a college admissions officer, a future business partner. Would you prefer someone with soul, skin, or token in the game? I'm guessing you would want, if you were those people, somebody with soul in the game. So if you want to become that person who gets chosen by these other people and institutions, then you're going to want to be that person that you would want to choose. And then third, look at the seniors whom you most admire, or the kids at school you most admire, but those seniors walking across the stage, the ones who are most admired by their fellow students and the faculty and the community at large. These overwhelmingly are kids who have soul in the game. Not exclusively, but overwhelmingly. Having soul in the game leads to the best outcomes across the board. So now pivoting back to parents, how can you help your kids invest soul in the game so they can have the best outcomes and the best experience of the process? You should ask yourselves, if you only talk about grades and college, then those signals are not going to be lost on your kids. They're going to come to school very likely putting skin in the game, trying to score and win. And again, there are worse things than that for sure. So to counter that, do you talk regularly about where you, the parents, invest soul in the game and what that has meant for you in your lives? That is a great thing to do with your kids. They are picking up so many great signals that way, and they're starting to learn about the difference it makes to be invested in the process and delight in the process of like creative good work. So what did we learn about what school can be? It could be a place to learn and to create, a place to score and to win, a place to goof around. And those outcomes are largely determined by whether you invest soul in the game, skin in the game, or token in the game.